Good morning and welcome to Prairie Doc Radio. We're so happy to have you listening today. Rick Holm, our Prairie Doc, is here in the studio ready to answer your questions of a medical nature. He really is today. We've got kind of have an Ask Anything day today. We have no guest in the studio.
Yeah.
Any questions you might have of a medical nature, you give us a call. Dr. Holm's specialty is internal medicine. He's a primary care physician with the Avera Medical Group Brookings, and he's also a clinical professor at the University of South Dakota Sanford School of Medicine.
We're going to do anything you want on this. Come on, give us your call, 692-1430.
1430.
And, you know, if you asked about ticks, we would talk about it. If you asked about cold exposure, we would talk about it. If you wanted to know about the Sailing Academy Regatta.
Sailing Academy Regatta. I'll bet that's not top on their medical list, but you never know.
We would talk about that. But okay. we would answer any questions. We would love to have your calls. So 692-1430. Please give us your calls, and then we'll go there. I'd like to have a show about that. But before we do,
yes,
let's talk about tomorrow night's show.
Yeah, it is.
It's on incontinence.
Oh, that's always a fun topic.
That has to do, it's the majority of people who have problems with urinary incontinence are generally women because they have a different method to shut off the waterworks than do men. And of course, you know, the distance between the bladder and outside in a woman is a half an inch or less. And the distance between a bladder and the outside in a man, well, it depends if it's Bob. It's probably a couple feet, you know, or
it's
it
a
depends upon the guy.
It's truly a distance.
And how old he is.
At least a few more inches than a woman, right? Okay.
But it's more protection than what a woman has, and there's the point why women have more problems with incontinence and also problems with bladder infections.
Go back to the old Kegel exercise?
We're going to talk about Kegel exercises. In fact, if you watch the show tomorrow night, there's a lot of good things to go in there. Yeah, Bob?
No, I just wondered, does childbirth enter into that particular
modality? Well, it does. And we used to think that it had to do with how you delivered, you know, and if it went too fast and if your doctor was really good and slowed it down and made it happen without tearing the muscles that surround the bladder area and the rectal area, and then you wouldn't have the complications. And we used to do episiotomy cuts where you would put scissors in and cut it in a controlled manner in just the right way, and then you would sew up the episiotomy. Now we don't do those anymore, but that's the old thing. We found that all it did was introduce infection. It didn't help anything. It didn't save anything, and it just caused more problems than it solved. That said, the problem with urinary incontinence with childbirth has more to do with the baby's head pushing against the nerves that go down through there, and the nerves being injured.
That's interesting. It wasn't the muscles, it was the nerves that were injured.
It's the nerves that are injured by the pressure of the head of the baby. At least that was the theory I read a couple of years ago. Now, I've heard also that there's some disagreement with that. So, in other words, yet another area in medicine where controversy continues to boil and people differ. But I think that there's probably, the real answer is probably there's multiple reasons. One might be that the nerves are destroyed by the head. Others might be that there's certain things that are torn. Others might have nothing to do with any of that. It might be just the amount of exercise a person does. And so when you exercise, it makes all the muscles stronger. And the exercise of the muscles in that area keeps them strong, and so they can hold tight and keep the urine back, and then relax when it's the right time. So it's a complex story.
It sounds like it. You know, I can mention this because my sisters aren't in the area. One of my sisters, from the time she was a young girl, had really bladder control. I mean, you know, if she laughed hard, she'd pee. If she cried, whatever,
Before she
it would
had
just
babies?
happen. Oh, when she was a teenager or even younger, She always had a
Was
problem.
she in condition though? I mean, was she an active,
Oh,
physically
yeah,
active
yeah.
person? So that didn't have
No,
anything.
she was very active. Just like, I mean, that age group, we all,
Were
nobody.
physically active,
There
running
wasn't
and
even
jumping.
television when we were kids.
We
That's
were
how old we
playing
are.
and
We
running
were
and-
outside, kick the can, football with the boys, everything. So I have never quite understood her problem, but it must have just been something she was born with that she didn't
Yeah.
have the control.
You
Well-
know, the best story, and I'll tell this story, is that I had she was in her early 80s-year-old patient who came in, and she had been self-cathing all her life, since 20s. And a lot of people, by the way, self-cath. They have a catheter that goes, that they can put in the right spot. They know where it is, and they can get it in to the bladder, and then they empty their bladder periodically. And if they don't, it'll retain. I mean, they'll hold the fluid until it's terrible, and then it'll be full and distended, and then it'll just constantly dribble, and then it destroys the bladder. So self-cathing, if you do it correctly, is not a dangerous thing, and many people live just fine with it. Thank you, including men and women. Okay, so she'd been self-cathing her whole life, and a healthy person otherwise, right? No problem. Just an 80-year-old sharp character who had lots of opinions, and you sure didn't want to disagree with her, and it was one of those, yes, ma'am, I'll do that.
Whatever you say is right.
You're, a headstrong person, and that's great, because it's probably why she lived into her 90s. But when I examined her, I found over her tailbone something that I've seen maybe one time before since, and that is there was a kind of a bulge, like it was a little fat pad there, and I put pressure on it to see what happened, and the bulge went down. And then I let go of it, and the bulge reformed. And so it was a fluid-filled cyst that emptied somewhere. Well, what could it be emptying into except the spinal canal? And so what she had was a meningeal, where when she was being born, there was a sac that went through the spinal canal and out under the skin, and oftentimes nerves will get caught in there, and that's why some people who are born are paralyzed and have a paralysis at the waist that is a birth defect. But she had a birth defect that was unknown. No one had known all these years, except that I found this cyst that it would go away. And she lived with a numbness in the area of her pelvis where she didn't have control of her bladder, and she had to self-cath. And
Very interesting.
I sent her to the Mayo Clinic when she had a problem with this or that, and I said, this is an interesting case. You may want to just kind of see her for this other problem, and oh, by the way, she has what I think is a partial meningeal that didn't paralyze her. And indeed, that's what the Mayo Clinic says.
They didn't remove it.
No, they didn't do it. Nobody
No.
did a thing.
She lived that long with it. You weren't going to do anything
She was
to
in
it.
her 80s when
Yeah.
I discovered it, and it was into her 90s when she died from
Something
heart failure.
else.
You know?
Yeah, that's fascinating. Oh, the human body is fascinating. On that note, we're waiting for your calls. Give us a call, 692-1430. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back right after these words.
So
It's fascinating.
it was the same.
Welcome back to Prairie Doc Radio. We're happy to have you listening today. Dr. Rick Coleman's here, ready to answer any questions you might have of a medical nature. And we were just talking about the program that will be on the air tomorrow night, South Dakota Public Television, 7 o'clock Thursday night. And it's a repeat of a program that Dr. Holm did on incontinence. And so we spoke about incontinence, which we probably pretty well covered. But I do know that Dr. Holm is going to be at a conference in September and the conference is on obesity. When you live in South Dakota, you might notice that there's a few overweight people. If you lived in New York City, you'd see fewer overweight people. But you live in South Dakota, you do see more. It's the Midwest, not just South Dakota. Minnesota, it's just a heavier population. So you're doing a conference on obesity. What are you going to say about it?
We don't know why people have this problem more now than before. We don't understand it.
More now than before.
Yeah, it's worsening, particularly with our youth. The theory is, of course, the kids don't exercise enough.
They're not outside.
And once you gain weight, it resets your body weight control mechanism so that you're going to weigh. If you stop gaining weight at that weight, you'll stay there the rest of your life. If you gain more weight, your body's going to want to be there the rest of your life. And so I think it's imperative that we try to keep our kids relatively thin. And the way to do that when they're young and when we are young is to maintain the weight where we want it, and not to let it, I'll lose it later, you know what I mean? Or I can eat everything that I want now because later, oh gosh, it's catching up with me. Well, I'll lose it now. Chances are, once you got it, you've got it. Your body sets itself at that level. And so what does that mean? Here's the thing that I'm going to be asked to talk about, and that is, and they called me about this conference, and I said, I want to talk about a bias against obesity. Our whole world has a negative bias about obesity. We have a feeling, they're lazy, or they're just a glutton. And so, that's been the theory that people commonly have. And the answer is that there's a lot more to it than we know. For example, people, when they have a baby, they will oftentimes gain back to the weight that they gained when they had their baby. Some of them will lose it, but some of them can't get rid of it. It comes right back to where they had gained, and then that's their new weight. The studies show that the people who are heavy eat less than people who are thin.
That's really hard to believe, too.
It's hard. People won't believe me. I tell it all
And
the
they
time.
won't believe you.
There's data to say it. Well, some people overeat, and I'll grant you that. But the truth is that many, many, many people who are overweight are constantly trying to diet. And I actually had two heavy people actually lose weight and maintain it 2 years. And their diet was under 1,000 calories per day.
Which is pretty low. And it took
Our
them 2 years
average
to
diet
maintain
is 3 times that. An average diet.
It's 3,000 calories.
Yeah, an average American diet is at least 3,000 calories. If you go to a regular fast food meal, it's generally 1,200 at least. If you have a malt, one hamburger, and French fries, that's more than 1,000 calories. If you have a glass of wine at night, a glass of wine is probably 300 calories. A cookie is 200. If you really learned how many calories were in the things that you would eat, and you said, I'm going to set myself at 1,000, or let's say you want to lose weight at 1,500 because that's the weight you really need to. If you're going to lose weight, you need to stick at 1,500. It's a significant reduction in the intake. And if you talk about these two people who maintained it, they're at 1,000. They've come up from 600 and 800 a day to 1,000 for maintenance. And the part of the reason why I maintain my weight is not that I watch my diet, although I try to watch it, and I'm not really good. I think about what I ate yesterday. It was terrible. I couldn't help myself. I skipped lunch, and then I gorged. So that's
Skipping
bad.
lunch isn't a good idea.
But I'm going to run 10 miles today. Or
to try to make
8
up for it
tonight.
Yeah.
Well, it'll make up. You know how many miles you have to run to lose 1,000 calories? 10 miles.
Come on, just to lose 1,000
Yeah, I mean, 1,000
Oh.
calories, you got to run a long distance. So, I mean, the point I'm making is, I'm going to increase my exercise a little bit. and I'm going to cut back a bit. No, it doesn't generally work.
It might keep you from gaining, but it's sure not going to help you to lose.
No. And so the bottom line I'm making is that we're getting heavier in this world, and we're seeing a lot of heavy people.
Do you
and
think
they're beautiful the way it isn't their weight that makes them beautiful. It's their compassion for others that makes them beautiful. It's their caring way that makes them beautiful. It has very little to do with their weight, and they can't do much about their weight. I mean, I think they can maintain, and we should all endeavor to eat better, balance our diet, and we should also endeavor to exercise at least 30 minutes a day, or briskly walk 30 minutes a day. But I think we should endeavor to love each other for what matters.
What we are, right. I do have a question, though. I've often considered it more of the cultural factor that is included in the weight, because the Midwest is noted for being heavier. If you go on the East Coast or the West Coast, I think there's a cultural expectation not to be heavy. And they're just lighter weight on the East and the West Coast. And it's just the way it is. And so they must be eating. What are they doing in order to maintain that cultural? Do you think I imagine this, or
I don't have no. But it depends upon where you're at too. I've seen Joni and I were in the airport together the other day, or last couple weeks ago, and just looked at the people, and the comment is, we're in a heavier area now. We're in a less heavier area now. It doesn't mean better people or worse people, or
No, I'm just saying the expectations are different from areas.
And it might well be that people in New York City, for example, they are younger. Because in New York, they're just basically younger. When you get to a certain age in New York, you get the hell out of there. Because
you move to the suburbs because you can't keep going.
The second thing is when you're in the city, you can't have a car. So you're either biking or walking and to the subway or whatever it might be.
You're hoofing it a lot more than in the Midwest.
Right. Well,
Midwest, you pop in your car no matter what.
It is an amazingly important thing to be active physically for all reasons. Bob, you're going to say something.
Oh.
Just thinking.
That never really dawned on me, but I suppose maybe it has to do with just our accepted diet. Maybe we'll eat more potatoes, or I don't know.
Yeah, the diet may not be the cultural. Maybe the diet that we find acceptable.
Kielbasa's on the street corner maybe are healthier than driving through a fast food place. I don't know.
That could be. Well, we don't have the answers. That conference should be interesting. We'll hear about it when you get back in September, right?
Yes, and I'm trying to form my ideas of what I'm going to discuss, and so that's part of the reason why I kind of wanted to talk about that today. Because if you, I think I talk as I think, or I think as I talk, or something like that, and it comes out
and it works,
and it helps me.
Good. We're going to take a break. Again, give us a call if you'd like with any questions you might have. We'll be back right after these words. Back to Prairie Doc Radio. Dr. Rick Holm is here answering any questions you might have of a medical nature. My husband has a question. Why did he get a tick last night? He just stepped outside to barbecue for a few seconds. He never even stepped on grass. He was on the deck and a tick was on his arm. How'd that happen?
Yeah, because I saw a tick dropping scenario under a certain tree, hundreds of ticks dropping. They're
coming out of the trees.
This is how they're in the trees. You walk underneath the tree, they see somebody underneath the tree, and they go for it. They're in the grass. They did a study in New York that within in every square yard of grass there must be like 8 or 10 ticks, and they carry the exudaminase that carry the Lyme disease. But here we don't have the Lyme disease, but we have a lot of other things that the ticks carry. I mean, the ticks are, if you look in the world of animals, they're the dinosaurs that eat things. They're the aggressive Tyrannosaurus rexes of the world. They live by drinking blood, and they go for it. Mosquitoes are the same, only it's the woman mosquito, the female mosquito, that needs the blood to feed her eggs. So she'll be doing it, and the man won't be biting. So the mosquito in this area, so far, according to Lon Keitlinger, is not the kind that's going to be carrying the dangerous virus from
Zika?
The Zika virus. And so we're probably going to be safe unless we travel to the southern parts of the world, or unless we're making love with somebody who's been in the southern part of the world. And southern can be southern U.S. This summer. So they're going to be very aggressive.
They're going to be worried in the South. I know they are. It's just a frightening thing, especially for women who are of the age to have children. It's got to be scary.
It's going to destroy the tourist industry for many areas of the world, the South in particular. The southern or the Central American and the South American countries that depend on the tourist industry.
It'd be interesting to see in a couple of years if they do research on birth numbers. I'll bet they go down in the South because women will avoid getting pregnant. What do you think?
They will.
Yeah, so the numbers could go really, really down on that. Who knows?
Right.
Interesting. Well,
we have a question.
Well, we do have a question that came in. Did we finish the top?
I think, the major
ticks,
thing
yes,
is
you covered it. What can you do
can
about
protect
ticks?
yourself from ticks by using mosquito repellent. And by the way, you should be using mosquito repellent anyway. And I like the idea of spraying a lot of it on your clothes rather than all that on your skin, although a little on your skin isn't so bad. And I mean, I just wouldn't soak your kids in it, you know what I mean?
No.
Soak their clothes in it. If you're out in dusk and dawn, that's when they come out really the worst. And so be careful. Don't go out in the dusk and the dawn, or cover them with the mosquito repellent, but
That will help.
mostly with the clothes. So long-sleeved clothes outside dusk or dawn.
Okay, I'll tell them it was the tree.
It could be
Son
the
of a
tree.
gun fell
I mean,
right out of the
trees,
tree.
It'll
Got 'em.
fall out of trees,
Yeah.
but it'll be everywhere else too. So
Well, we mentioned that we'd like to have a call, so we had a gentleman call in, and he uses the CPAP at night. He gets a very dry throat. Is there anything he can do? Is there an alternative to the CPAP? Why don't you explain first what the CPAP is for those who
sleep
don't know?
apnea, obstructive sleep apnea is something that people get older, their neck gets softer, tissues fall in, and they snore at night. They didn't snore when they were younger. And when they snort and snore and obstruct, then it raises the death rate. The death rate in an Australian 13-year study changed from 6% when you didn't have it to 33% when you had it.
Sleep apnea.
Sleep
30
apnea caused death rate in 30 to 65-year-olds over a 13-year period from 6% to 33%. That's a 500% death increase in death rate if you have sleep apnea.
Rick, why do we only hear about this from you? I mean, you think that'd be major news out there.
It should be, and
It should be.
I'm shouting pretty loud.
I know you are, and I think it's important. I mean, if it's saving lives, it's so worth it.
You think about the 500% difference in death rate with a reversible, reduce it back to 6% with CPAP, compared to cholesterol, where you have a 20% difference, and it's not reversed by the lipid-lowering drugs. Where is our priorities? But that said, let's go back to
the question.
because we're almost
Gets
out of
a very
time.
dry throat with the CPAP.
And the answer is, I don't have a good answer. I mean, they do humidity in the CPAP air, and I think it helps some people. It doesn't help all. I think I'd do these mouthwashes that sometimes can help Bob.
Lemon glycerin that
Yeah.
they sometimes use?
Right. So I think I would do those things. I like throat lozenges before you go to bed, maybe. I don't know. Saliva is different than water. Water can dry things out. Maybe it is the humidity. get rid of the humidity and try that. I mean, I don't have a good answer. I would say that some people are just dry, but
You do have a good answer to this question, though. Is there an alternative to the CPAP?
and the answer is not really.
Thank you.
Actually,
I knew you had an answer for
the
that.
mouth answers and the teeth position things are only effective for mild sleep apnea, which is not that risky. The moderate to severe, they don't work. So don't depend on it, because think about the dangers there. So I would beg you to think about, and if you don't tolerate the CPAP, learn to tolerate it, or keep bugging them till you get a mask that works. Or
Well, the other thing is, when you have a CPAP, you have a provider, and you can go back to that provider and say, this is drying out, this is causing this problem, and they want to help you and work with you, right?
I think the other thing is, remember, a lot of medicines can dry your tears up, dry your mouth, your saliva out. And so think of that as a possible source. Look at your medicines, talk to your doctor about your medicines. Push your doctor on CPAP and sleep apnea if you have heart trouble, or there's a risk of heart trouble, or if there's new atrial fib, if there's any heart failure. Those are reasons to talk about sleep apnea, and make sure you don't have it. There's a simple test, a sleep DSAP test, and find out. And we're running out of time.
Okay, thanks, Dr.
Tomorrow
Holm.
night, incontinence. Don't
You
forget.
got it. We hope you've enjoyed our Prairie Doc radio program, and we'll listen again for Prairie Doc, brought to you by the Avera Medical Group Brookings. As always, you can hear and see more from Dr. Holm online at prairiedoc.org. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks. That's all for this week, Rick.
Thank you, Joan, and thank you, Bob, and stay healthy out there, people.
That's good.